Number 1. Kodak ignored digital cameras. In 1975, a Kodak engineer named Steve Sasson built something extraordinary inside the company's own lab. It was the world's first portable digital camera. He showed it to the executives. They were not impressed. The bosses could not understand why anyone would want to look at photos on a TV screen. They patented the technology but refused to develop it for sale. Their fear was simple. Digital cameras would kill film sales, and film was where the real money was. So the invention sat in a drawer. Competitors eventually ran with the idea. By the time Kodak decided to take digital photography seriously, it was already too late. In 2012, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. The company that invented digital photography was ultimately destroyed by it. Number 2. Blockbuster rejected Netflix's deal. Picture this, the year is 2000. Netflix is a struggling startup that mails DVDs to people's houses. It has fewer than 300,000 subscribers and is losing money fast. So the two co-founders, Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph, fly to Dallas. They walk into Blockbuster's headquarters with a proposal by us for $50 million. Blockbuster's CEO John Antioco reportedly laughed them out of the room. He called Netflix a niche business. Blockbuster had 9,000 stores and 60 million customers at the time. Why would they need a small mail-order DVD company a decade later? The answer became obvious. Streaming had taken over. Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy in 2010. Netflix is now worth over $300 billion. Number 3. Nokia dismissed the smartphone. In 2007, Nokia controlled 51% of the entire global mobile phone market. That same year, Apple launched the iPhone. Nokia's response was essentially, so what? They called it a luxury toy. They believed hardware quality would always win. They were wrong. Nokia was trapped by its own operating system, called Symbian. By 2009, the company was running 57 different incompatible versions of it. Competitors like Apple and Samsung were building ecosystems with apps, seamless software, and great user experiences. Nokia kept making better phones while Apple built a better world. By 2013, Nokia's global smartphone market share had collapsed from 49% to just 3%. That same year, Microsoft bought Nokia's phone business. From owning the market to selling off the pieces, all in about 6 years. Number 4. New Coke's epic flop. In the early 1980s, Coca-Cola was losing ground to Pepsi. Pepsi's blind taste tests showed people actually preferred the sweeter flavor. Coca-Cola panicked. They ran 190,000 of their own taste tests and developed a new, sweeter formula. On April 23, 1985, they announced they were killing the 99-year-old original recipe and replacing it with New Coke. What followed was immediate chaos. The company received up to 8,000 angry calls a day. Over 40,000 complaint letters poured in. People hoarded cases of the original. One man in Texas spent $1,000 buying as much old Coke as he could find. Protesters poured New Coke into sewers. Someone even mailed the CEO a letter addressed to Chief Dodo. Just 79 days after the launch, Coca-Cola brought back the original as Coca-Cola Classic. The lesson taste tests measure flavor, not identity. Number 5. JCPenney killed its coupons. In 2011, JCPenney hired Ron Johnson as its new CEO. Johnson had just come from Apple, where he helped build the famous Apple Store. Wall Street was thrilled. His big idea for JCPenney: no more coupons, no more fake sales, no more artificial markdowns. He called it fair and square pricing, honest, everyday low prices. It sounded smart on paper. But JCPenney's core customers had spent decades building their entire shopping ritual around the thrill of the coupon. Clipping a deal was not just saving money, it was a sport. When Johnson removed that, he did not simplify the experience. He took away the fun. Sales collapsed. The company reported a staggering $4.3 billion drop in revenue in a single year. Johnson was fired in April 2013, less than 2 years after joining. His predecessor was brought back to reinstate the very coupons Johnson had killed. Number 6. MySpace turned down Facebook. Back in 2005, Facebook was barely a year old and still called the Facebook. It was a college-only network, but growing fast. Mark Zuckerberg and his team had a meeting with MySpace CEO Chris DeWolf. The offer on the table: buy Facebook for $75 million. DeWolf passed. MySpace was riding high at the time, the most visited website in the United States. Why spend $75 million on some college website? About a year later, Zuckerberg came back with a higher price, $750 million. DeWolf said no again. Facebook kept growing. By 2007, Microsoft paid $240 million for just 1.6% of Facebook, valuing the whole company at $15 billion. MySpace, meanwhile, declined into irrelevance. News Corp had bought it in 2005 for $580 million and eventually sold it in 2011 for just $35 million. Number 7. Decca Records dropped the Beatles. On New Year's Day, 1962, four young men from Liverpool drove 10 hours through a snowstorm to audition for Decca Records in London. Their names were John, Paul, George, and Pete. They performed 15 songs in the studio. Then they waited. Weeks later, Decca's A&R man Dick Rowe turned them down. His reason: guitar groups are on their way out. He chose a local London band called Brian Poole and the Tremolos instead because, as he put it, they were easier to work with geographically. The Beatles were rejected by multiple other labels too, including Columbia, Pi, and Philips. They eventually signed with EMI's Parlophone label with producer George Martin. By 1964, they were the biggest band on the planet. Dick Rowe became known for the rest of his life as the man who turned down the Beatles. Number 8, Yahoo passed on Google. In 1998, two Stanford PhD students named Larry Page and Sergey Brin had built a search algorithm they called PageRank. They wanted to sell it, abandon the project, and go back to their studies. The asking price $1 million. Yahoo said no. The reason was almost comically self-defeating. Yahoo did not want a search engine that sent users to other websites, because it wanted people to stay on Yahoo. 4 years later, in 2002, Yahoo's CEO Terry Semel recognized the mistake and tried to acquire Google again. By then, the price had risen to $5 billion. Yahoo offered $3 billion. Google said no. Yahoo eventually sold its core business to Verizon in 2016 for $4.83 billion. Google's parent company Alphabet is now worth over $2 trillion. Yahoo passed on buying the future, twice. Number 9. Gap's logo disaster. In October 2010, Gap decided it was time for a fresh look. For 20 years, the brand had used the same iconic logo, white capital letters inside a navy blue box. Everyone recognized it. Gap spent an estimated $100 million redesigning it. What they unveiled on October 6th was a plain black word mark in Helvetica with a tiny blue gradient square in the corner. The internet reacted instantly. Within 24 hours, over 2,000 negative comments poured in. A parody Twitter account gained 5,000 followers in a day. Over 14,000 spoof versions of the new logo spread online. Ad Age compared it to something a child made with clip art. Gap tried to fight back by asking the public to crowdsource a better logo, which only made things worse. 6 days after the launch, on October 12th, Gap scrapped it entirely and went back to the original. $100 million. 6 days, back to square one. Number 10. Pets.com's Super Bowl bet. Pets.com launched in November 1998 with a bold vision: sell pet food and supplies online. The business model had a fatal flaw from the start. They were charging less for shipping than it actually cost, meaning they lost money on every single order. But instead of fixing that, they bet big on marketing. In January 2000, Pets.com spent $1.2 million on a single Super Bowl commercial featuring a talking sock puppet. The ad was a hit. The puppet became famous. It even got its own float in the 1999 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. None of that sold enough pet food to keep the lights on. In February 2000, Pets.com raised $82.5 million in an IPO. By November 2000, just 268 days later, the company filed for bankruptcy. It had burned through over $300 million. The only asset worth anything at the end was the sock puppet, which sold for $125,000.